So I have a question because the API space. The first blog was programmable web 2005, saying APIs are the next big thing. When I was pitching VC in the Valley like 2, 3, 4 years ago, they were already saying me like the API economy. Some people tell us about it since 2005, and it's not happening. So maybe Nicolas, you can begin by to your mind, either really an API economy right now. Do you see something? And do you see something? Do you see a specific big market opportunity, or it's still like being slow?
Yeah, I mean, it was also back in the day, like when I was first a VC in a smaller firm, I was like, okay, I'm going to look only in the API management space because, like the sentence we often see at those conferences. That in 2010 everybody will want an API, so I was like, okay, we're going to be the API builder and those kind of thing. So I looked at that space and we saw some big company emerge from it. So I see some name in the back like APG, like Freescale, MyShape, Mashery. But except for APG that did an IPO, all the others got acquired at a good price, but maybe it was not $1 billion company yet. So you always have the theory, like, do you invest in people that look for the gold or people that sell, how do you say, shovel and...
Picks and shovels.
Yeah, picks and shovel. So my theory was like, okay, let's invest in people doing picks and shovel, but maybe that was not a good one, just to focus only on API. But to answer your question, I mean, it's obvious we're in an API economy, but do we really call a company a pure API company? No, it's a company that created an algorithm or a product or a service, most of the time an algorithm, that is good at doing something, so either a process, either a logical thing or machine learning, and API is the most efficient way to distribute it. So yes, we are in an API economy, but maybe companies don't present themselves like that. But I mean, definitely I don't see a lot of companies nowadays that present themselves that either don't rely on API to do their business or that don't provide their service through an API. And this is even bigger with the mobile world, because the mobile world, like you obviously need API in the back, because on the client side you have like small process power, so you rely on API to do all the back things.
So for example, Parse, the backend as a service, acquired by Facebook, $85 million, is not a good sign for the API economy for VC, right? Is that what I understand?
No. What I'm saying, they didn't become a big company on their own. They got acquired early, but they are now everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm not saying it's not a good sign.
No. Because I was, you invest in most like promising like $1 billion company. You want the top one, and I'm sure that when someone is acquired too fast, like it's maybe you miss. It's missing the opportunity, right?
Yeah, when we have when we invest money from a large fund in several hundred of million, like Axel or like us, we do need a big exit to get fund returner, but we all know that it does not happen all the time.
Yeah.
And so, for example, we're an investor in Sunrise that could be seen as a pure API company, because basically it was sitting on top of, or it's still sitting on top of Google Calendar API with some intelligence on top of it. So it was exited at $100 million. So I'm not going to tell you we were not happy, but I'm not going to tell you it was $1 billion company.
Yeah, okay, I get it. And you, James, you have a vision on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. We've been talking about the API economy for on 10 years now, and I think it's always going through waves. And I think there's a few drivers now that are really starting to ramp up, and you can just sort of look out across, in the open API space. So putting API tooling aside, the open API space, you've got whole companies coming to market which are completely no stack, which are built entirely off other people's software. Companies like Uber and Hotel Tonight, which is in our portfolio, that is just literally built on the stack of Twilio and Stripe and Braintree, etc. And it means these companies are coming so much faster to the market. And for the API providers, it's fantastic, because you've got a situation where if you can provide a reliable API and you're doing a job or a business process or a technical process which is really hard to do it yourself, then you can get really sticky customers and you can really grow with your customers. And so I think that's driving a lot of the really interesting businesses on the open API side. And on the other sort of trends, I mean, we're seeing a lot of these companies are facing very, very attractive go-to-market routes now because they're selling to developers, they're selling to DevOps. These guys who have budgets to buy these things, they are becoming the kingmakers here. And the best thing about selling to developers is if you've got a really good product that's scalable and fits a purpose and does something hard, then you don't need to do that much marketing. People talk. Developers talk to each other about great products, and so there's a huge sort of virality and developer evangelism that sits behind the best APIs. You just have to look at guys like Stripe and Twilio and Algolia. They have all of that. And then I guess the third major macro trend that we see and that we like is that APIs are going mainstream. I mean, this is, Kin Lane always talks about how it used to be back in '95, everyone used to ask, do I need a website? And by 2000, the answer was clearly yes. And the same thing was, 3-4 years ago, people were asking the same about APIs. And now the answer is clearly yes. And so you've got companies like British Airways and Coca-Cola and these guys all rolling out API programs. And of course, for VCs, that's not directly relevant because British Airways is a little bit late stage for us as a VC. But we can sort of look at some of the next generation tooling that's coming through, and I think there will be some really innovative companies that come to market doing a next generation set of tooling for building, for monitoring, for deploying, and for consuming APIs. So that's another area that really interests us.
So yeah, but just makes me think. Totally agree with what James just said, but it's quite interesting. Like in the API tooling and B2B space, I agree that we see more and more stickiness, and if you have a great tool, developer speaks, word of mouth, so you have like fast customer acquisition and low churn. So this is great when you invest in this kind of company. But on the other hand, what API bring to the tech scene, either B2C or B2B, is that it's easier and easier to build a complex solution on top of API. And so now the cycle of a company going from nothing to being big and then to being replaced by the new generation is also getting faster thanks to API. It's like tomorrow, so for example, let's say we're an investor in a company called Citymapper. I guess you all know them. Definitely relies on a lot of API, and actually API from like incumbent and old companies, not tech companies, like TFL or this kind of thing. It's just a matter of good design and good execution, but the access to the data is available to anybody, so anybody else can do it anytime. So on one hand, it brings also more competition on the end product.
You don't see it as a lack of IP sometimes to rely too much on other people?
Not at all. I mean, look at Slack. It's been built off, when we invested in those guys, they were doing something completely different, to be fair, and they had a few pivots, and then suddenly they cracked onto this thing where you just integrate with everything via an API, and you have a really good UX on top of it, and you've got the fastest growing SaaS company that's ever been built. I mean, there's a lot of IP in that.
And Slack, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not an investor, but I love that company, and it's even becoming one of my investment theses to invest on Slackbot. Because I see so many amazing things coming from Slackbot, so it can just be seen as a new distribution channel, but I'm starting to see some really, really impressive company built on Slackbot, and that was a debate we had internally the other day. It's like, is it really just like a layer on top of Slack, and so no IP and no real value in the long term? Or is it really becoming like, are we going to see emerge like large players on top of Slack? Personally, I think we can see some big players emerge out of Slack.
Because Slack is the platform, no? That enables you make a lot of plugins and bots that you want, right? So they have an API and they enable everybody to interface. They are a huge communication platform, and then so they don't rely on people. But just an example, like imagine I make a map application, like great map application, but I'm just a top layer on top of Google Map. Or you can take the example of, I think it was Mailbox. They were just a UI on top of your email provider.
Yeah, or like Sunrise on Calendar.
Yeah, or Sunrise on Calendar. So yeah, it's not a big deal.
I mean, yeah, it's a kind of, I mean, making an investment decision, it's not like always easy. You always scratch your head. So when we see companies that seems to be too seen and not relying on their own stuff, we scratch our head saying, okay, is there a long-term value here? But at least in the B2C and mobile app market, the value is in the usage, design, UX, and you see that in the metrics. And if you see that people are opening the app every day or coming back, like even after 90 days, there is like still like 60% of the people coming back. You're like, okay, well, maybe they were just sitting on top of other, but I don't care. They were the one in front of the eyes of the user, and they managed to build the thing that works. And down the road, that's what counts.
And if it's on top of APIs like that had neutrality issues in the past, like LinkedIn or Twitter, in the past they may have cut some access to other people.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean,
yeah, I know.
When Twitter sort of cuts its API access to everyone left, right, and center, I wouldn't want to be the guy sort of doing business development for in Twitter. When you're entirely reliant on an underlying source, that is always going to be a business risk, and it is a reason why some of these companies some of these open API companies face a risk, right? Because you are developing with a company, and you'll be their underlying infrastructure, and the company gets to a certain size, and it has to make a decision: do I in-house this stuff, or do I continue with Stripe doing my payments or whatever? And I think if it's a complicated enough process, as the open API provider, you'll be okay, because it's just too much of a pain in the ass to in-house that stuff and do it yourself. Whereas if it's something a little bit more commoditized, then it's kind of dangerous. That's a real risk to your business model. People will start to internalize that stuff. I mean, AWS is sort of a great example. I mean, it's companies will build on top of AWS to a certain point, and then it just makes economic sense and business risk sense to make sure that some of that infrastructure comes in-house, and you'll start building it yourself. And I guess on the counterfactual, you've got companies like Uber, who are still running off Braintree as a payments provider, and are still running off Twilio as a communications provider, even though they're at such massive scale. So it sort of swings both ways, and I think you really have to, as an open API provider, you've got to make sure that what you're doing isn't going to be commoditized.
Yeah, and try also to understand that the platform you're building on top of it, what their core business and core value, and or you in their critical path. But it's not easy to find. Like if you look at Twitter history, it sounds like opening all their API have been their like external R&D strategy, because they let anybody build. I remember at the beginning of Twitter, you had like some search engine, external search engine. You have like 2 or 3 competing, and they finally bought one that they put in-house. Same thing for analytics. Same thing for everything, and after they close the API, so like Twitter is a good example of what you described.
Yeah, but maybe they will use Algolia, because they use already Algolia and Periscope, I think. Yeah, so on the customers, so yeah, things are changing. So just with APIdays, we see a lot of startups, and on the market, it seems that three startup groups are emerging. So API as a product, like search as a service, or I don't know, like email as a service, or others like that, like Mailjet or SendGrid. It seems we have API tools, people and tools, platforms enabling to build APIs. We have like API automation tools, like API for non-developers, like if this then that, like you drag and drop and you're able to connect APIs together. Like I want all my Facebook photos to be on my Dropbox, like for example, stuff like that. But for humans, right? It seems that we have some successful companies in each, but which for you is the most like promising?
I think for me, I think there's exciting bits in each one of those segments, and there's boring bits in each one of those segments. But I think, from our perspective, the exciting bits. Let's take my boy API tooling. I think there's a whole world out there as we move from a world which is dominated by open APIs to start thinking more and more about internal APIs. And I'm sure someone here had one of those slides that you see as a sort of the iceberg with the public APIs up the top and the private down the bottom, which is an order of magnitude bigger. Especially now when we're thinking about microservices and within internal application infrastructure, the number of APIs within a company are going to go, again, another order of magnitude higher. And that requires a whole bunch of new next-gen management tools, build tools, consumption tools, etc. So that's an area that I think is particularly exciting around the API tooling. On the sort of the API as a service, the sort of core API, if you will, I think there's, we're increasingly starting to look at it in terms of the various areas. I don't think we're attracted purely to a company because it's an API as a core. That's like being attracted to a company because it has a mobile app. It's just a distribution method. But the sort of areas that I think are really exciting, I mean, here with the banking API conference, that's, fin services in general are a huge area of focus for us. With the sort of fragmentation of banks and more service providers coming in to provide some of those services, you do need open APIs to enable those sort of new players to get up and running from day one with things like credit scoring, bank account access, that sort of stuff.
Anti-money laundering.
Money laundering. Exactly. So there's a ton of interesting stuff, and the blockchain is a whole other area, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. It's a great way to deliver blockchain services via API, of course. And then what was the other one where we were talking?
So automation.
Automation, yeah.
For humans.
Guys like
non-developers.
You think for human or for machines?
Yeah, or for machines. It can be another one.
If you look at the recent, it seems to me one of the strategy of if this and that is to go big into the so-called Internet of Things, and they created that do button. Yeah. Basically, you could say, when I press this button, turn on the light in my house. So, I see Internet of Things plus those kind of peer or FTTT, that may be big.
So we received the CTO of IFT, this drag and drop company, for the if, then they know that they make the do, and I asked him when we will have the while, really like...
So and why? What do you say?
While.
While.
While. That would kind of like a streaming and completely like automation and completely like with the machine learning stuff and things.
But when we will have the why? When will API? No, yeah. Why? When will API answer our philosophical question? That's another.
Yeah, that will be more complicated.
It's so for automation, though, because it's sort of. I mean, if you're literally just connecting to SaaS services, that's a hell of a way to get commoditized very quickly. I mean, it's kind of a race it's an arms race to connect the most SaaS services, right? And that's not a game that I think you really want to play. You really want to be the one who's in there, who's adding value and not just transferring data from one place to another. You're actually enriching it or doing something to it. And I think, on the marketing side, Segment is a great example of this. It's kind of a vertical specific Zapier in some cases that can pull all the data from your various marketing automation tools, all the various tags on your e-commerce website, for example, pulls them all together and enables you to do the analytics that you need to on that. But it enriches it by sort of putting it all into a framework and a schema that enables you to connect up all your various data points from your systems, so your customer view across your CRM and your e-commerce sites and everything else. And being able to enrich the data like that is key to not being commoditized, I think, in that market.
Or another business could be to become a mafia business. Basically, you see all the data going through and you stop them and you say, no, you pay me if you want me to let you go.
So maybe another one that you theorize, like Slackbot. So are Slackbot the new Facebook apps? Like when Facebook was trying to acquire Zynga, or all this platform that now has been it's not so trendy anymore. But yeah, so do you see Slackbots as potential?
I have a feeling that I'm going to be pitched by a lot of Slackbot in the next coming 6 months or a year.
Yeah, humans behind Slackbots, right?
What?
The humans behind the Slackbots, right?
Yeah, the human behind the Slackbot. But actually, when you look at, I'm starting to look at some Slackbot company, and most of the time it's 50% a bot and 50% humans, because bots can't do everything yet. But yes, no, I think it's quite impressive, all that ecosystem that is being built on top of it. But is it the strategy of Slack to acquire them? I don't think so, because, for example, I was talking with a company doing Expensify type on top of Slack. So basically, you use Slack, you take a picture of what you just bought or your ticket, and then the bot automatically create an expense, and at the end of the month send you money. So maybe this is too thin, but maybe you could see some more global. I manage your travel, your expense, and everything on top of Slack. But it's just because of the user interface is so easy and good that maybe that may become a big channel because it goes fast within companies. But I don't know what is Slack's strategy. Maybe you do.
So now you will stay with us, but Louison will talk about blockchain, right? So yeah, so Louison may make a small presentation on this, and then he will join us, and we will finish the discussion on APIs, blockchains, and other stuff like that, cool. And with more interaction with the audience. Yeah. So Louison, please connect. So I met Louison like 1 year and a half ago. Louison is really one of the top experts. Is young, but all the experts in this space are often young. Yes, he's building a great startup. He made an accelerator in San Francisco called Boost. He has been selected amongst the top entrepreneurs in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So he knows really a lot about it. It's really a surprising entrepreneur. So yeah, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, good. So warm applause for Louison, please. Thank you.
Thanks. So yeah, I love Bitcoin because I think it's gonna kill banks. I'm kidding. I think actually the technology behind Bitcoin can be very useful for banks. So that's what I'm gonna talk about today, the technology, not necessarily the currency. So how do you create a currency online? First option, very easy, use a centralized server. You just stock all of the information about the accounts. But Bitcoin is decentralized, and that's why it's cool, because nobody can stop it, basically. But when you have a decentralized database, you have a problem. How do you do the consensus? How do you know that nobody will put fake transactions inside the database? So that's why Bitcoin is cool, because they basically pay people to verify the transactions. So that way, you know that all the transactions are valid, because you will need to be part of those people being paid to corrupt the transaction. It will be very cost effective. I mean, not cost effective. So this is called the blockchain, the file, the big database where all the information, all the transactions are being stored. And because thousands, it's like 6,000 people today, are verifying those transactions every day, then you know then that everything that is inside is secure. Nobody can corrupt it. Nobody can remove what's inside. Yeah, if you put something inside, it stays there forever. Nobody can change it. So if I have 100 Bitcoins, nobody can say that I have only 50 Bitcoins or 200 Bitcoins. Even me, I cannot say it. Like, I will need to corrupt the whole network to do it. And it will cost a lot of money, like billions of dollars, even more than that. So because this database is decentralized and cannot be corrupt, there are a lot of use cases on top of that. First use case, that's what I'm doing actually, you can kill notaries. Like, you will just need to send the hash of any document in the blockchain to prove the date, the timestamp of the document, but also the integrity. You know that the file hasn't been changed between the date you sent it in the blockchain and the date you just verified it. So that's one use case. Another use case connected to APIs are contracts, smart contracts. Basically, the miners, so the people verifying the transactions, could be the judges, the people executing the contract. So I don't know, like, we could connect an API and say, well, if this API returns that information, then send 50 Bitcoin to someone for any type of job or anything. So this is very interesting, I think. I'm going to talk about it maybe after. And third thing, assets management. Like, basically, now when you move money or you want to invest in a company, you have like so many third parties, people, man in the middle, and it costs money to everyone. Like, it's a pain in the ass for customers, but banks, governments, everyone. And with blockchain technology, the trade is the settlement. You don't need anyone between you and the asset, because you have the cryptography securing all the stuff, all the management. And that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Maybe you can join the panel and then we finish the discussion. So maybe one thing, one question about the blockchain, like, so it's a big public database, right? Big public ledger. And the thing is that many people say, and I know you don't like it, but I will ask. Many people say that, the databases will be so big one day, so big that the promise of decentralization will be not true. We just have new kind of banks or bank-sized company, maybe the banks themselves, that will be able to have this to handle that. So the promise of decentralization will not be accomplished. So, what is your classic concern?
So if it's fully decentralized, it doesn't scale. Like, the more transactions you put in the blockchain, the bigger it is. Like, today it's like 40 gigabytes, I think, and it's gonna go up a lot, like in the next 3 years. Like basically, if you imagine that all the transactions in the world, like handled by Visa, are in the blockchain, it would take like terabytes. So I believe that we will have like sort of banks, like Coinbase, for example, handling all the transactions. I mean, most of them, and it's like basically emails. Like you can send an email using Gmail, and if you have Gmail and I have Gmail, you don't actually use SMTP. But if you want to use SMTP, you still can. So I think it's going to be the same for money. You will be able to use like banks like Coinbase to send bitcoins to people. But if you don't rely on Coinbase, if you don't trust Coinbase, you can still use the protocol. And because everything is based on cryptography, you can still have your money at a bank account, but still have the control over it. Like the bank will not be able to steal the money, basically.
Yeah. Just a question: who has Bitcoin in the room? Like, a wallet Bitcoin? Yeah, kind of 1/5, 1/6 of the. Yeah, I know you have. So, Nicolas, I know you look a lot at the blockchain and blockchain applications. What is your vision on that?
I was just lucky that I was early on Bitcoin. And I made a bet and that paid me some good holiday in south of Italy. So after I was like, okay, maybe I should do more than that with it. No, but so in the Bitcoin/blockchain ecosystem, so because world are changing, we definitely saw and are seeing different waves. So the first wave, obviously, the first was like more or less a gold rush, and with miners that raise money, with wallet, like the basic infrastructure, let's say. Actually, I think you guys are investor in one big KNC miner.
A wallet and a miner.
And now we are starting to see the second. I mean, they exist before, but we are starting to see them as VC who have been pitched by the so-called blockchain/smart contract companies, what Louison just described. Yeah. So like in the past 2 months, I've been pitched by 3 different smart contracts company, one doing private blockchain, public blockchain. So so right now it's more like the blockchain economy. And what we notice also is that banks are starting to get more and more interest, because if you look at most of the like top UK banks, they have at least like some kind of Bitcoin/blockchain lab. It's not they don't have any like live product right now, but at least they hired some people to think about it.
Yeah, Intel has a blockchain lab. IBM has a blockchain lab.
IBM.
Accenture, Deloitte, RBS.
A lot of banks invested in Bitcoin and blockchain technology, like BBVA, I think.
Invested in Coinbase. BBVA invested in Coinbase. Yeah.
BBVA invested in Coinbase.
JP Morgan.
Maybe also the New York Stock Exchange invested in Coinbase also.
Yeah.
New York Stock Exchange is doing more. No, Nasdaq is working.
Nasdaq is also working with Chain.com to create a marketplace. To create a marketplace based on the blockchain technology.
Yeah, that's something I think is really interesting about this market. Is we're the same. We get pitched by a lot of the smart contracting companies, etc. And again, coming back to the picks and shovels thing and tying it into all of this is a lot of sort of interesting applications for APIs sitting under there. And the APIs are great at abstracting 2 things really. Firstly, sort of application complexity, and so then you've got companies who enable you to spin up a company like this off the back of a colored coin technology. So the company like Colu who are working on that, enabling you to do that by API, and then Chain as well, enabling you to do it directly on the blockchain, and then I'm sure Blockstream are working on something for their Sidecoins project. So there's a lot of these sort of interesting APIs that are coming out and enabling you to just spin up a blockchain application and abstract away all the complexity around building it yourself. And then on the other side is like the other things APIs are great at abstracting away is compute power required. And the miners are out there busily mining the hell out of Bitcoin at the moment, and that'll eventually shift to being, shift from mining into processing, and having it being a situation where you can open up APIs to enable banks or whoever it is that sort of becomes the large settlement agencies that sit behind all these blockchain applications are going to need all that compute power in order to process it. And so opening your mining rigs up to people that need processing power via an API is likely going to be a fantastic application of APIs.
Like AWS for the blockchain.
Yeah.
Distributed for API,
So I founded APIdays, like it's our 17th conference in 3 years. I founded a company based on APIs. So yeah, I trust it. But I was discussing with a huge e-commerce platform that make real commerce and e-commerce, and they were telling me that for us the web is just a distribution channel. It's not a market. It's just a distribution channel for our goods. So my question is the API buzz, like API thing, actually it's not a market by itself? It's just the distribution channel, and actually API or no API. So me saying that is maybe weird, right? But API or no API is the product behind that, the value, the team, and it can be an API. It can be, as Jan Yerba said, teletransportation. It can be whatever the mean that makes the big thing. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I mean, we, like you, hold an API conference. It's in the Valley every year, and 3 years' time from now, we're going to be holding an API conference. Probably not. It'll be like holding a mobile conference. It's just too broad, This is
electricity one.
Yeah, it's just a distribution channel. So I think you're right. But you're seeing it now. I mean, you're now holding API conferences focused on banking and finance, and you had one recently around predictive analytics, right? So it's becoming much more focused on the categories that can be delivered by API rather than API itself. Because I think you're right. I think that's going to be a strange thing to talk about in 3 years' time.
Okay, so you say that APIdays will be dead in 3 years, right?
No, I'm joking. I'm going to do more of these like this.
Yeah,
and,
I'm joking. But so yeah, and so you're talking more about the value first. API is just a distribution channel, right?
Yeah.
But a smart one that can scale faster than most of the other and everything. But yes, down the road, the value is not the API. The value is either the logic, the process, or the access to data you give behind the API.
So it's like we just call it like growth hacking days, right? Kind of. Okay, no, so I get it. So we have time for a few questions also. Yeah, one question there.
Hi, yeah. Just wanted to ask Lauren, really, what his view was on Bitcoin XT and the debate on changing the block size.
Yeah, I don't know.
And how it'll impact it in the long run, potentially, if it does.
Yeah, so, the Bitcoin community is divided now between two types of people who support the actual version of Bitcoin and a fork, which is called Bitcoin XT. So basically, it's all about the block size. So the size of every block. So a block is like a part of the blockchain. Because today, the block size is not big enough. So basically,
it's not big enough if you want to use it as a tool to make
already today,
a lot of transactions.
We start to see some blocks that take a lot of time to be validated because there are too many transactions inside. So some people are trying to make the block size bigger. My opinion is that I don't think it's a solution. Like we will make it bigger, but we will need to make it even bigger after, so it doesn't scale. We just need to find other ways. And I think the future is not full decentralization, it's semi-centralization. Even if we have some servers, because it's all based on cryptography, we don't have to trust those people, actually. We have to trust them to do the transaction when we do it, but to store the money, we don't have to trust them. So we don't necessarily need to use a full blockchain. But there are a lot of different options.
And what about, you wanted to say something?
We are seeing some company like Ares Industry. I don't know if some of you know them. Antemis was a seed investor. Those guys are allowing you to do the complicated and heavy things outside of the blockchain.
Yeah.
And just in the blockchain, keep a trace of transaction.
That's what we call private blockchain. You can basically have a blockchain that is not public, but you will put one hash of the state of the blockchain every 10 minutes in the public blockchain. So that way, I think we can scale Bitcoin, actually, by using off-chain transactions, so not in the public blockchain, in private blockchains, so kind of banks, and still use the public blockchain as a way to make sure that banks are not stealing your money or doing anything else.
That's what I want you to say.
This is what we call also side chains or alt chains.
No, side chains has nothing to do with that, but this is another technology that could be interesting.
Yeah. So can you tell a little more about side chains?
Side chains? So it's basically interesting for that question because Today, when you want to create a new coin or, create a new innovation in the Bitcoin space, you need to create a new coin or to fork the network, like with Bitcoin XT. And sidechains will let you make improvements to the protocol without having to create a new coin or, a new coin. So you will just be able to switch from Bitcoin to Bitcoin XT without having to change your software or anything. Without having to create a new coin, basically, or doing a fork.
And just maybe a quick question on banking and Bitcoin. Like, do you think banks should take big part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, like providing customer wallets or stuff like that, or they will not be able to do it on a culture perspective?
It's a tough question. Like, they are interested, definitely interested. Some banks in Estonia, for example, the LHV bank is doing that. They basically let you host your own euros on your phone. So you have euros, but they're not in the bank. They're in your phone, thanks to a private blockchain that they have and colored coins. It's a tough question. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's definitely stuff to do in the financial world. I don't know what exactly.
You have any opinion on this?
Yeah, right now it's more like companies, not really bank, but like companies, or actually I don't know if it's a company, like Swift, like the entire banking world that may worry about Bitcoin or worry or that could leverage it. But not the day-to-day activity of a bank is not in danger right now with Bitcoin, but the inter-exchange between banks, yes, you can start doing it with blockchain and things like that, but as we said before, banks are looking at it.
Yeah.
We are just in the early days, and they know that. They also know that they have a lot of other things on their plate. It's one of the things they're looking at, but I think they'll manage to handle it. It's not going to kill them. We are going to see some hybrid stuff coming out of it.
Hi, a question for James. What's happening now with Bitcoin and blockchain is a bit like deja vu 13 years ago with Linux. So they say that teenagers talk about sex, but they're not doing it. It's a bit like in Wall Street 13 years ago, nobody was using Linux, but everyone was experimenting with Linux, and here we are now, it's replaced Unix. So do you think Ethereum-based architectures may be the right solution for banks to look at how they can engage with blockchain-based architectures?
I haven't heard the comparison before, but it's pretty apt, I think. You're right, and it would surprise me if it's 15 years from now we're sort of getting to the same level in which we've got Linux now. But the same thing could be said around the amount of development that's happened around the Linux ecosystem that you're seeing. I mean, you wouldn't have ever thought that you'd have Linux containers coming at us 15 years ago, and evolution like that has completely brought that completely to the fore now. And so, it's going to be the same with Bitcoin. I mean, the amount of innovation, the same with blockchain, the same with the technology corpus as a whole. The amount of innovation that we're going to see in the following years, it's really sort of anyone's guess what's going to be really coming to the fore. And in 10 years' time, I think it will be, in one way or another, a fundamental part of the financial system. But I think anyone who can tell you what's going to be the technology that wins out in the day is kidding themselves.
So last question, maybe for two for you, one for each of you. But like James, what would be the perfect API that do specific stuff to invest in? Like, an everyday's problem. Like you say, oh, if I find a company that does that as an API, like I'm in. Like, you have any idea about that? And same question for you, and for you a specific cryptocurrency or blockchain stuff. Yeah, tough question.
It is a tough question. I get pitched all the time these sort of image recognition APIs. They're like, take a photo of this T-shirt and we'll tell you where to get it, or take a photo of this whatever.
Sneakers.
Yeah, sneakers. And it's such a killer app. Like, if you get that right, it would revolutionize internet shopping, right? But it's just so hard to get right, and no one's really been able to crack it. So if someone came into it and could do that well, I'd be in.
Yeah. I'm in San Francisco. One startup for APIdays San Francisco pitched us like, oh, we do like, you take a photo of your plate and we give you the number of calories, right? And say, oh my god, like how can you do that? Like optical character recognition or stuff or VC, And actually, they were using Mechanical Turk. Like they were using humans, taking a photo, sending it to humans behind an API that was kind of trying to estimate the quantity and things, and giving back the answer. So yeah, and Amazon Mechanical Turk, I think Crowdflower also are making this platform with human behind API. So maybe it's possible, but it will be humans. Yeah, I don't know. Any idea, Nicolas?
Yeah, no, tough question. As I told you before, maybe an API that replaces the philosopher and that can answer a philosophical question like why are we here and everything. I will invest.
like machine learning? Oh no, philosopher directly.
Yeah, like Siri, but one that works. I mean, it works, but like for philosophical question.
Yeah. No.
And maybe I will invest in that one, but.
Yeah, that's it. And you?
So for Bitcoin.
Yeah, for a blockchain, like would the really just get rid of market application, like things that are hard to put in place, like a currency that would make you like excited.
Like, what would be the best use case for Bitcoin?
Yeah, for example.
I don't know yet. If I knew, I would do it. I don't know.
You used to say that Bitcoin is the Netscape of the blockchain economy, right?
Yeah, I think we're still at the Netscape level. Like the web just started, and we don't know what's gonna happen. It's just universities and governments using it, and it's the same for Bitcoin. Like some people are using it, but nothing has been developed. And if I knew what should be developed, I would just do it. So, I don't know.
Maybe it's bit-proof.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And when you say kill notaries, it's kill notaries' job, right? Not kill notaries.
Well, you know, Bitcoin, drugs and stuff, you never know.
Okay, we'll cut the camera on this. Nicolas, you wanted to add something? I see you at the mic.
No, it was a stupid thing.
So, thank you very much for this panel. Thank you very much.
Good.